We did it, 200,000 subscribers here on YouTube. Thanks for all your support. This time last year, we were just on 100,000. It's been 5 years in the making, so definitely not a quick process, but I've enjoyed it. Today, we're going to mark this milestone with a Q&A of your questions submitted via YouTube and Instagram. The first question by Connor Keneally is, what is my current workout and split routine? Now, right now, I'm filming the Strong in 20 Dumbbell series, which is 5 workouts a week. So when I'm filming a series, I tend to just stick to doing those workouts, and so that I can still talk during the workout, sometimes I will go a little bit lighter than I might have gone had I just been following along like you guys at home. And because of that, I will add in a few extra workouts myself, just 30 to 40 minutes, maybe just 2 or 3 gym sessions on top of some of my favorite movements. But generally when I'm filming, I'll just stick to the filming schedule. But outside of filming a series, I follow a 4-day split routine. So that's 4 gym days. That is a vertical push-pull day. So basically chin-ups and shoulder press lateral raises. And then on day 2, I'll do a legs and core day. Day 3, I'll do a horizontal push-pull day. So that's bench press, horizontal rows. And then on the 4th day, I usually train here in the garage at home, and I'll do arms and accessories. So whatever I feel like doing, that might just be doing arms and then some mobility, might be arms and a bit of calisthenics practice. I will put calisthenics practice into the other workouts to start off. So I'll warm up, and then on the vertical push-pull, I might do handstands and some front lever training, and then I'll do some gymnastic conditioning movements on the horizontal push-pull just to keep the skills sharp. A lot of calisthenics is not just about your physical abilities, it's also a learned skill, so it does require weekly practice. Next question is from Darius6089. What is too much to avoid burnout, and how to balance rest days? He said he's doing 2 to 3 of my videos a day and increasing the dumbbells up from 2 to 5 kilograms up to 8. So he's made progress. That is one thing. If you're making progress and your weights are going up, you're probably not burning out. You're not overtraining if you're increasing the weights. When you're overtraining, you'll probably stagnate or even start declining in your progress. I assume we're talking about physical burnout, but one thing you can do is pick a workout order that allows certain muscle groups to rest while other ones are working. For example, I do like a planes of motion program. So I'll do horizontal push-pull on one day, and I'll still work my upper body later in the week, but I'm doing slightly different muscles, slightly different planes of movement. So I'll do vertical push-pull on the other day. I also do it so that I've got a leg day in the middle. So while I'm working my legs, I have a full day off for my upper body. So that could be upper-lower split, just alternating between the two. But try and think about your programming, not doubling up the similar muscles on consecutive days. Another one to avoid burnout and watch out for is look out for signs of inflammation. Usually it's going to be elbows, wrists, maybe knees or shoulders. Now, don't just ignore early signs of inflammation, because once you get tendonitis, especially in your extremities, which have a more difficult time getting blood there and back, mainly getting blood back, they struggle with. Don't just ignore it. You need to change your training volume early or change your exercise selection to avoid that getting worse and becoming a chronic issue as opposed to just a little bit of acute inflammation. That can be done, as I said before, by doing an upper-lower split. You might be tempted to add a little bit of arms onto that leg day if you're trying to build your arms, but you've got to be realistic. If your elbow's starting to flare up, just leave it and trust the process. You'll do enough volume in the week to adapt. You don't need to add extra in. And same with your knees. Maybe if you're a runner and you got a half marathon coming up, I know it's tempting to get more miles in, but long term or even in the midterm, you're not going to do yourself any favors by running on a sore knee. Just take the rest day if you feel like you need it. Next question from Paul Green. Outside of health and fitness, what are my hobbies if I ever get time to indulge in them? Now, I don't have that many hobbies outside of health and fitness. Health fitness was my hobby, and then I turned it into a job. But indoor bouldering feels very different to me from my classic gym work, and that's probably my main hobby if I could, I'd do it every week. I'd probably in reality only go every 2 to 4 weeks, which might not be enough really to make any progress with it, but I just enjoy it anyway. I enjoy the social aspect of it. One person climbs while the other person rests. It's just go back and forth, not too intense. Good to have a chat, especially as men. Sometimes it's easier to chat side by side doing something rather than sitting opposite the table facing them, which feels a bit intense. My other one, probably not a hobby again, would be traveling to, let's say, less typical European countries. Once a year, I do a brothers trip where me and my brothers go away. I usually organize it and pick an obscure country I haven't been to. So we've done Romania, we've done Bulgaria. We did a great road trip around Bulgaria. We've done Estonia, Tallinn. Estonia was amazing. Took a trip over to Helsinki. We've done Albania. Albania is great. If you want to do hiking, I highly recommend going to Albania. Do the Valbona to Teth pass. It's a pretty easy route to follow. Lots of people do it, but it's amazing scenery and it's super cheap there. So if you count traveling to obscure European countries as a hobby, then I'd put that in there. It's probably my favorite thing to do. And apologies if you're from there and you don't see yourself as a more obscure country. I just mean you don't hear that many people from England going, but I think they're the best kind of countries to travel to. Next question is from Kritty Bindra 4232. They said, I want to learn how to document progress, what metrics to track, and how to store them. I keep it fairly simple. I'll use Apple Notes fairly extensively. You can separate into folders. You can even put tables in there. So I do a lot of tracking in Apple Notes. And for my online coaching clients, which I only have a few of those, I'll do EverFit Coaching app. Now we'll put stats into there. We can track reps and sets. But if you just want an easy way of doing it, Apple Notes is a great way. Now, if you're doing more of a follow along style, I'm actually going to release an app version of the TPT Studio currently hosted on my website, which functions really well, but I can add new features with an app, such as a note section, which will go underneath the follow along workout. That'll be private note for you, separate from the comments. And that's somewhere where you can log what weights you use during that follow along. And it also means that you can put what exercise difficulty level. And when you go back to redo that workout or redo the series, you can use progressive overload and see what you used last time, maybe upping it a little bit. The beta version of that app is pretty much ready and it'll be rolling out some testing in December, hopefully launching the full app version of the TPT Studio early in 2026. Now, if you're looking for fat loss tracking, I don't use body fat percentage anymore. I find that any commercially available scales, without going into a lab, the BIA scales are just too wildly variable. If you want to look at them, there's fine, but it's hard to use weekly tracking with them because it'll throw out such different numbers. So weight is a really good way to track. I recommend weighing yourself either every day or every week. I do think frequent weigh-ins are better because it stops you stressing about the natural fluctuation. Make sure you're weighing yourself at the same time each day though. So usually when you wake up, after you've been in the loo, before you've eaten anything is a great time to do that. I also do photos, but again, you need to use the same lighting, so the same time of day in the same spot of the room. And the other one is clothes size. Now I find for men, just using trouser size on jeans, there's not much variability in that. And for women, it can be a bit tricky, but sometimes dress size can be a really good way of tracking what average size are you wearing. And over time, you'll know if that's staying the same or going up or going down. When it comes to strength, if you're doing follow along workouts, then just making a note, as I said, either on an app or in your Apple Notes, on what weight you used for each workout or what difficulty level you used. That's a really good way to track it, and then you're looking to increase it or improve it over time. Now, if you're more doing a sets and reps style program, I do use 1 to 5 rep maxes quite a lot. I won't use a 1 rep max for something like a back squat. Instead, I might use a 5 rep max at a weight, and then we might use that to then predict your 1 rep max to give you training percentages. But just picking 3 core lifts that you want to improve. So that might be deadlift, strict press, chin-ups or bench press, sometimes it's a good idea to pick a strength exercise such as a deadlift, but then also having a body weight one such as dips or pull-ups, because you could just get heavier and improve your strength, but your relative strength to weight ratio might have gone down. So having a body weight one as well, if you want to stay lean, is a good thing, because you'll notice that if your chin-ups are getting worse but your deadlift's going up, you might want to reduce your calories a little bit, maybe sacrifice a little bit of deadlift progress in order to still make progress with your chin-ups at the same time. If you don't care about being lean and you're just looking to get strong, then don't worry about the body weight one. You could just stick with your main compound movements. So either do a 1 rep max test on safe lifts. Make sure you got a spotter, especially if you're doing a bench press or a back squat, and you could test that and then look to improve that over time. If you want a slightly safer option, pick a weight that's more like 85 to 90% of your 1 rep max, or take a guess at it and see how many reps you can do at that specific weight, and then retest at that same weight, but looking to add reps onto it as opposed to adding total weight. There is a 1 rep max calculator in the TPT Studio, so you'd put in how many reps you did at a certain weight. Let's say you did 5 reps at 80 kilos, and it'll give you a predicted 1 rep max, which you can use then for your program. So if I program someone 80% of their 1 rep max, they wouldn't even have to do a 1 rep max test. They could do a 5 rep max, use that to get the predicted 1, and then they've got a number to work all their weights off for the program. There's also a 1 rep max testing protocol to follow, which is my favorite one, which I use for all my clients. It reliably gives me the best lift and the best chance of getting the highest 1 rep max. For the TPT Studio members, just have a look in the workout plan section. You'll find it in there. If not, I'm sure you can find one online. Just Google 1 rep max testing protocol. Mine's based on my experiences as a personal trainer, tweaking a few of the online ones to make it more accurate to what I've experienced with my clients, but I'm sure there's loads of good ones out there. Next question. I've been watching Stacey Sims. Do you agree that women should train differently than men? Now, I did have to look up who Stacey Sims was, and I got a brief overview, but apologies if I get anything wrong. I didn't look into it that much, but I do get asked this quite a bit. And in short, no, I don't think men should train much differently to women, other than they have different priorities. So a man's muscle is going to respond very similar, if not exactly the same, to a woman in terms of training. So if you're doing 10 reps with a controlled tempo for a similar amount of sets, I'd say that that is the same prescription you should give if you want to build muscle mass for both women and men. Now, the difference in training might come with preferences. So I personally like to do a little bit more arms. I'd like to have better developed arms. So I'll add volume into my arms. And that's not to say that women shouldn't do the exact same rep schemes, exact same sets and exercises, but they might just not do them as frequently. And for women, typically, they say that they like to develop their legs more, so they might do more lower body exercises than I do. Now, I'm still doing those exact same exercises in the same way that the women are, but I'm just doing them slightly less frequently. I probably just do 1 main leg day a week, whereas a lot of the women I train will do 2 leg days a week. So it's not that they're different in terms of biology. Well, obviously, they're going to be different, but in terms of their training and how they'd approach it, but it just depends what your preferences are. If you had a shoulder injury, I'd be giving you shoulder rehab exercises. Everyone's going to have individual preferences and you should train for them, but I wouldn't change it too much in terms of change it of your cycle, or there's different rep ranges that are appropriate for women to men. We all respond the same. Muscle is muscle. I did read that some people recommend that women should train at different volumes and intensities for different stages of their cycle. But to be honest, I think you have to be realistic with your training. How detailed is your training plan where you're going to reduce the volume or increase it on a week-to-week basis in relation to your cycle? I think it's best to just be aware of how your energy levels are and be sensible with it, in the same way that if someone was having a stressful time at work, they might not be hammering themselves and not as much in the gym. So let's say you're at a stage in your cycle where you're feeling more fatigued. It's okay to just go a little bit lighter or just reduce the intensity slightly, but you can do that based on how you feel. I don't think programming that ahead of time is going to be that practically helpful for most people. And let's say you weren't sleeping very well because you were having a stressful time at work. I'd probably give the exact same recommendation. Follow the same program, but just let yourself off a little bit. If you've done, let's say, 3 working sets and you were programmed 4, if you're exhausted, it's okay just to do 3. But that's just about being mindful about your training and your recovery. And when you feel like you need it, backing off. And when you're feeling good, increasing it. I don't think you can program that in that well ahead of time for most people that are just trying to live their lives, go to work, look after their kids. Let's be realistic, follow a plan, adapt it slightly based on how you feel. I do want to reserve the right to change my mind on that though, so feel free to disagree. I might disagree with myself further down the line. Next question, at Mint Everest said, how to balance different life spheres such as work and fitness. So if work's a particularly intense time, then you need to be more efficient with your workouts. I'd choose full body rather than isolation or a split routine. So rather than doing chest on a Monday, let's say back on a Tuesday, if you're only going to fit 3 workouts in, you're never going to cover most of your body. And by the time you come back round to doing chest again, it'd probably be 3 weeks later. So choose full body. That doesn't mean doing every single lift or every single muscle in your body. It just means in one session, you're going to cover some of your upper body, some of your lower, and maybe some of your core. On YouTube, I do get people commenting saying, this isn't full body. What about your calves? If you've clicked on a 10-minute routine and it says full body, it doesn't mean you're literally going to do every single lift or every single body part. It just means that there's a global approach to the workout, doing a bit of upper, a bit of lower, maybe a bit of core in there. I did have a 10-minute foam roll routine, which was labeled as full body, as in we're not just focusing on the legs or just the upper body. And people are like, what about the lats or something like this? And it's like, well, if you've clicked on a 10-minute routine, you're never going to do the whole body. Let's say we're rolling 50 seconds at a time. Well, I've only got 10 exercises that I can fit into that routine. So we're doing a global approach. We're not literally going to do every single muscle in your body. It's also important to remember that when things are busy, you're never going to find time for a workout. You're never going to be like, oh, you know what I need to do? Go into the cold garage and start doing some curls right now. Well, I do that sometimes actually, but you're probably not going to find time. So you're going to have to make time for it. So that means putting it in your diary like you would an important work meeting and making it a non-negotiable that you're not going to skip. So schedule a time where you know that it's going to be free, or it will be if you put it in your diary, and then do it and stick to it just like you would any other appointment. It doesn't have to be long. It could be 20 to 45 minutes. Next one, Aaron 4139, advice on a shoulder click sound doing pull-ups and some of the shoulder movements. He said the doctor advised him to just ignore it if there's no pain, but it's bothering him. This is actually really common. This is actually really common on overhand grip pull-ups and on shoulder movements. And one fix that I use is to use rings or a neutral grip for pull-ups. For some people, just that overhand grip, especially if they're hypermobile or have a slightly different shape to the socket of their shoulder, there might not be anything you can do to avoid the click in terms of exercises to correct it. But if you just switch to a neutral grip, you could still go wide and do a challenging pull-up. But that neutral grip, just taking the shoulder into a slightly more comfortable position, might get rid of, and for a lot of people will get rid of, the clicking sensation, which isn't an issue, but it is if it's causing you discomfort or you just don't like it. But that can also be used for shoulder press movements. So if you're doing a shoulder press, everyone's shoulders are made slightly differently. So the socket that your humerus is going to go into is not going to be the same for everyone. So if you're finding what classic technique would be fine, but it's uncomfortable for you, you can just adjust it to the shape of your shoulder. So if you're doing a shoulder press like this, if you just bring your elbows in slightly, then you might find it's more comfortable. Or if it's still uncomfortable, just go fully to a neutral grip and do a neutral grip press. Sometimes I'll put people on a landmine neutral grip press, and that's way more comfortable than doing a barbell overhead press. So use neutral grips or use rings. Rings are really good when you're doing pull-ups, chin-ups, because they'll rotate with what feels comfortable. So they'll move to the shoulder angle that feels best for you. Next one from NefNef3547. They said they've lost over 10 kilograms in the past few months using my videos, but their weight loss has stagnated physically and mentally, and they'd love to hear thoughts if I have any tips on overcoming it. First of all, congratulations on 10 kilo weight loss. That is a huge amount. If you try and walk up a steep hill and you're carrying 10 kilos more, that's a life-changing amount of weight to lose. So you might hear other people losing more, but don't compare yourself to them. 10 kilos is a great amount of weight loss to improve your health and improve your abilities. However, if you're looking, let's say, for a mental refresh, get some enjoyment back in your training. That could be changing gyms. I change gyms quite often, probably every 6 months to a year. I'll probably change to a new gym just for a little bit of a mental refresh, and I'll start enjoying my training more. A new environment does help. You could buy a new pair of dumbbells. If you're training at home, it's amazing what just having a couple extra options of dumbbells will do for your enjoyment of a workout or your motivation to work out. Another one would be just trying new programs. So let's say you're doing follow-on series, just sign up to doing a different series and give it a try. It'll give you a structure to follow, give you a refresh. We always need a refresh of motivation. Everyone loves to try something new, get involved with something new. So just find something you like the look of and give it a try. Some practical steps for overcoming a plateau in weight loss. 2 things. Number 1 is try tracking your calories. You don't have to track your calories long term, but spending 2 to 4 weeks using an app like MyFitnessPal and logging your food will definitely give you an awareness of how much you're eating. And if you set a calorie goal that you know is going to give you some consistent weight loss and stick to it, I can kind of guarantee that you are going to lose weight. And it might be a pain, but if you know that you're only going to do it for 2 to 4 weeks, then it's a lot easier to stick to. And then after those 2 to 4 weeks, you try and maintain that same diet and portion size that you'd used while tracking, but given the extra motivation, and you might have learned a few new portion sizes on how much you should be having. And then the second thing, on the other side of the equation, the calories out, I recommend, it's nice and simple, but set yourself a daily or weekly step count and track your steps. Sometimes a weekly step count can be better. So if you just look at your weekly average, but set a daily goal, then you won't have that emotional high. If you had one day where you just rammed in work and you couldn't get your steps in, the week's not lost. You don't have to give up and start again the next day. Just make sure by the end of the week that you've hit your average. So the next day you're going to have to add a few extra steps on. But reducing your calorie intake, using calorie tracking, and increasing your just base level of calorie output using steps is a really simple way to get your progress back. And let's finish with a big one that came in from Instagram, and it's, why did I close my gym? This is going to be a tough one, and I'd love to do a full video on the whole experience of running a gym. I ran Synergy Health and Performance, which was my physical gym in Chester. It was mainly group training classes and personal training rather than an open gym format. But I did that for 10 years and I just closed it about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So a huge life change for me. Part of it was that I was due a lease renewal and I had to sign another 5 years if I wanted to stay. And it made it kind of a black and white decision whether I stay or go, and I didn't want to stay for another 5 years. If it had been just 1 more year, it would have been a harder decision, but yeah, 5 years or out, I chose to close the gym. One thing that took me a long time to come to terms with and realize was that what you want in your 20s is not necessarily what you want in your 30s or 40s, and that's okay, that dreams can shift and you don't have to just stick with it because it's something you said you wanted to achieve once upon a time. So in my 20s, I had my laptop screensaver, I want to open a gym by the time I'm 30. And that is something I was working towards, and it was a sole focus, and it's something I managed to do. And I ran it for 10 years. But it took me a long time to come to terms with the idea that although it was once something I dreamt of doing, that actually priorities had shifted and it wasn't necessarily serving me well anymore, and it wasn't my priority. I have a family now, I have an online business, and maybe even kind of death of an ego to some extent of you want to control your own space, and I don't really care about that now. I want to have a good community that I can work in, and I want to train my clients in a good facility, and there's no real reason for me to be the owner of it as long as I can keep doing those things. The gym didn't fail financially, but I would say that it wasn't worth the energy it required to keep it going for the financial gain I got out of it. I don't want to get too much into politics in the UK, but it's extremely difficult to run a small business here, and the costs are rising. The commercial rent costs are crazy. Um, to run a business at a break even, you almost have to be extremely successful. So we were busy every day with personal training. The classes were doing fine when we ran classes, and it was still difficult to pull a meaningful amount of money out of the business as a profit. It just wasn't worth the input I put in for the output I got. And although it was running fine and we could have kept going for another 5 years, the weakening economy and the rising cost in the UK meant the direction it was going in long term wasn't necessarily something I wanted to be a part of. Alongside doing the YouTube and the TPT studio, I still do some one-to-one in-person coaching. I think I'll always do some of that, even though it's a much lower volume than I used to do when I was full-time. It keeps me practiced at doing the job. So when I'm doing a follow-along workout, if I've seen 100 people do the same thing wrong, then even though I can't see you when you're doing the workout, generally all the people will do the same things wrong. So I can give you a technique tip that you're almost certainly making or needs correcting without even seeing you do it, just because everyone tends to do the same things. So keeping practiced at the job, keeping learning new exercises, doing a little bit of in-person coaching, I think is something I'll always do to keep me sharp and keep me good at the online content. Me and the other Synergy trainers, almost all of them went to go work at the same gym. It's called Vortex in Chester. It's actually the gym that Paddy Pimblett, a UFC MMA fighter, trains at. So it's pretty cool to see him there. I have spoke to him briefly, but I don't bother him. He's there to do his training. Maybe one day we could do a video together, but I just leave him to his own thing. And another big reason for closing the gym was just that I could, because of the online YouTube content and mainly because of the TPT studio and the memberships. It gave me the ability to earn a living without having to run the gym. So if it had been 3 years earlier, I probably would have had to have signed the lease renewal, just because that's how I paid my mortgage, it's how I paid my bills. Whereas now I've alleviated some of that pressure by having an online income alongside the personal training. So I was just in a position, especially with this garage setup where I am now, that I can film at home and I didn't need it to keep my business going. One huge motivating factor is that closing the gym not only gives me some more time back, but also some more headspace. And being creative, you can't force it. It requires you to have some mental space to think. There's a reason why all your best ideas come in the shower, and it's just because there's nothing else going on. You've got no phone, you've got no distractions, and your mind can wander. So giving myself a little bit of time for me to come up with better ideas for workouts, for YouTube. I'd love to do some more interesting projects which won't organize themselves, stuff like collabs with other YouTubers. That'll mean traveling to them. I'm willing to travel to go see other YouTubers. If we can film some content together, I can learn from them. Hopefully they can learn a bit from me, and it will just be fun in general. I'd love to do some podcast episodes discussing health, fitness, lifestyle, and all these things take a lot of planning, work, sometimes travel. So giving myself the creative freedom to focus on that, I'm really looking forward to. And that's it for all the questions, but I'm really excited. 2026 is going to be a big year for me, alleviating a lot of time for me to focus almost exclusively on creative online content. I am a big goal setter, so I will be setting business goals, YouTube, lifestyle, my own fitness goals for 2026. I'm not sure where we'll get to subscribers wise. Maybe 500,000 is possible, but it is largely out of your control on how fast YouTube decides to help you grow your channel. I want to focus on making content that I would genuinely or do genuinely do myself, strength-based stuff that I think is beneficial, not just chasing high views and clicks. So wherever we end up subscriber-wise, as long as you're still coming along, you're enjoying the content, you're still benefiting from it, and I'm still making content that I enjoy and think's beneficial, then whatever we get to, it's good for me.